Good afternoon, good evening, or good night, wherever you are in the world. This is the High Caliber Man podcast with myself, Hugh Mayers, and I'm joined this week by counselor and mental health specialist, Solomon Andrews. Greetings, my bro.
Greetings, peace, and blessings.
How you doing, King?
I'm doing fine, King.
That's good.
That's doing well. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here to you today, to break bread with you, and to walk in the spirit of our ancestors, and to bring love, peace, and blessings and unity to all.
As O'Shea. So look, I wanted to look at issues related to the inner child, related to shame, right? And things of that nature. But also, I guess what's been on my mind is that, you know, it's not last week, but, you know, in recent months, Robert Kelly was convicted of a number of crimes, right? But involving, you know, sexually inappropriate crimes, and that he's been sentenced, expecting to spend about 30 years in prison. But then there's also the Harvey Weinstein in the background, the Me Too movement. And even in the UK, Tim Westwood has been, you know, in front of the dock, or you know what I mean, like, or under the spotlight, right, for some allegations of a sexual sexual impropriety or criminality, right? And so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the psychology as well of predators, is it something more, I think sometimes, is it something more systemic, or are they just men and women that are deviant, that learn deviant behavior and go and act out? Or is it more part of a system? Is it like sometimes where people are victims and they report this to trusted loved ones, relatives, whatever, but they don't get no traction? I know there's a film, right? It's an old, I can say old, but it's a bit of an old Jamaican classic now, Dancehall Queen, right? And I'm going to give you a scenario, right? One of the leading young women in the film, she's a child, she's a teenager, but, you know, probably about 15 years old. And there's a family friend, Larry, the man Larry, right?
Larry.
He kind of like appears like he's some, not Robin Hood, but some good Samaritan, because he picks up the kids from school, he brings shopping around to the house, he drops off money. But then one day when he goes to pick her up from school, it's like he's moving to her in a bit, what do them kids say, bookie fam? Like he's moving a little bit weird, like sexually inappropriate, to put it blunt, right? And she has to kind of, you know, thwart his advances. But then when she goes and reports this to her mum, checks in with her mum, like to say, hey, what's going on? Her mum in so many words says, well, you know, try and go with the program, because when dude is around, you know, things run right. In other words, he's got money. So she kind of selling out a little daughter for chicken and rice, or rice and peas, as they would say. But
like Max Garvey.
Yeah, that's exactly what came to mind when I thought of that phrase, right? So, but on another note, I'm wondering, culturally, does that happen in other places amongst, you know, Caucasian people? Is the dynamic the same? Is it happening in North America? Like, I'm wondering, like, for example, with R. Kelly being alone with these very young girls in studios, is it like the movie where, you know, a girl's gonna say, mom, you know, Robert moved a bit weird to me, and mom or dad is saying, well, you know, baby girl, try, you know, I'm trying to feel like, trying to more or less go with it, or turn a blind eye, or, you know, something's going on. So are these people, do these individuals come out of a system as opposed to just individuals that are acting inappropriately? Give me your thoughts, man. Give me your thoughts.
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to break bread with the eye and to chop up some stuff together. Particularly as Black men, we need to, show the intelligence, to show the wisdom, to show the knowledge that we have, and not let society or the media push us into a box that somehow we're only here to be fetishes for a demented and immoral, corrupt society. So I believe that in answer to your question about whether these predatory kind of behavior is societal. Is it some type of societal
systemic? To throw can I throw that word in there? System, like part of a system.
I was going to say that it is systemic. I think because of this society is based on moral corruption in some way, or it's trying to push itself from a particular mindset. This society was built, British society was built Barclays Bank, NatWest, was built on the backs of slaves. The slavery powered the Industrial Revolution. Slavery made Britain so-called great. That's undeniable fact. The evidence is in, the metadata is in. I've read the research, right? It cannot be contested. Therefore,
I think Dr. Khalid would say indisputable and irrefutable.
And every other audible word you can find. So this is a country that up until I think the 40s or the 30s, children could go to work in mines. Children could have, well, I think that up until the 30s, I read this the other day that the sex age for children, for young people to have legal sex was pushed to 16 up until the 30s. So before the 30s, it was, you could have children, people was having, children will work in the mine, children were working as adults, and children could be sexually exploited. The twist is all about, this guy Fagan with all his little children. So I think that they've come from a view where they're trying to develop a morality around these things. And I feel that basically, because we're in a materialist society, a society built on monetary gains and wealth and all this type of thing, whereas we're talking about high caliber men, right? These things are all about, costings and money and this type of thing. So I think that because the society that we're in, if someone seems to have this celebrity, somehow parents turn a blind eye to what happened to that situation. So Michael Jackson, for example, people would, I'm not saying did anything, but they would dispense their natural inclination to let a 40-year-old man sleep with their 5-year-old son. And they would take him to house parties where there was no other adults apart from this one adult with all his kids sleeping in his bed. Now, in normal situation, you wouldn't let that happen. But because of celebrity, he was like, oh, that's kind of fine. R. Kelly, he said he could make these young girls into artists or whatever. So people were taking their 12-year-old, 11-year-old, sorry, not that young. These girls were like 16,
like teenagers, but young teenage girls. Yeah, but
under the legal age of having sexual interaction.
Yeah.
They were taken there and left there. And because the moms said, oh, when the children complained, there were children complaining, it was like, yeah, but he's going to make you a star. He's a great man. Don't insult him. This has happened in Islamic, for example, in the Islamic world, we're aware of this. Many sheikhs and scholars, and not just Islamic world, in the religious world, the priests,
clerics, amongst the clerical class, the priesthood and clerical class,
have been known for generations to abuse children and abuse young people who are naive because the parents got this thing about, oh, he's a scholar, these people are religious people, and so when the child complains, shut up. So we've had this happen a lot, right? So I believe it's a systemic problem because of our move towards materialism. And I remember there was a scene, I think I told about this before, in Roots, where there was the guy that the slave, the guy that whips people, the overseer?
Yeah.
Had a little hut. And the moms would take their daughters, underage girls, to the overseer, and they would say, look, you need a blanket for winter, you need stuff, so go and see him. And also part of that was that the more children the slaves had from the overseas, because they had all these mixed race kids, they were just more cattle really for the plantation. But the idea was that we just gave our young girls to this machine, this altar of predatory behavior. And I believe it's a systemic thing. And I spoke to a policeman about this 2 or 3 years ago. And he says, if the public knew the levels of pedophilia and how normalized it really is, they would tear the country down. But the police, we have to make sure this doesn't get out because it is systemic, it is endemic, and it's not going away soon.
Can I just say something on that? Because we know in the public there's a brilliant documentary on Netflix about Jimmy Savile. And again, it shows the systemic nature. To me, it highlights the systemic nature that this wasn't just some bizarre man operating in a vacuum that nobody knew about. Lots of people knew about it. And he was very connected, right, up to the top, to Buckingham Palace. That's how connected, and he was hooked up. He was in a network. So this man was operating in plain sight, you could say. But there was some kind of power dynamic at play that meant that it didn't come to light until the man had passed, until the man had died. Do you know what I mean? That they could really sort of challenge or bring out his indiscretions, but it was like known, right? So there's that very important documentary series, and again, it is something about I don't know if you bring gender into it, but it's kind of like the elephant in the room. Some people might say it's patriarchy, a part of power, right? It's not about sex, it's about control, right? And about domination. But there is an element of, I want to ask you about this very uncomfortable question, but I will have to ask it, controversial as it may be though. Is there something about hypergamy going on in this whole conversation? Because if you notice, the newscasters usually use these things, like use this tone of voice when they go, and he used his power and celebrity to lure, and he uses power and celebrity to woo, but they use the terms power and celebrity in a very like suspicious way, but like why don't they ever say he used his receding hairline and his garlic breath to lure? Because those things aren't appealing, are they? Or he uses low income and low social standing to lure. He didn't, did he? He used his money and his fame. So there's a phrase they use, licky licky and yummy yummy. And I'm not victim blaming, because a man has committed a crime or a woman has committed a crime. They must pay. They must face justice. But is there something in the society, again, I want to keep using that word society, what kind of breeds people to be like possibly vulnerable or susceptible to those things?
Mm-hmm. I think obviously the hypergamy is important, and it's really what's playing out with the situation, isn't it? Right? And yeah. I think it's not about luring people, and he used his what is it? What did you say again?
His fame and his fortune, and not his receding hairline and his protruding belly or nothing like that. Do you know what I mean?